7:01. Please stand for the pledge. The pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on a non-agenda item that did not sign in? Okay. Do we move on to the approval of the minutes? Did anybody find anything that you feel needs to be changed? Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes as is.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, we are going to move on to. This is goofing me here. Just a second. Public hearing number 1 is to receive public comment and consider recommendations to the town council regarding amendments to the 2043 Town of Bartonville Comprehensive Land Use Plan.
Madam Chair, what you have in your packet is what I hope is the final edit. Depends on what, again, I think I've incorporated all of the suggestions and the changes y'all have made through the process. This also does include the updates from the planner on the demographics. And if you'll notice on the table, page 11 of your packet, page 5, if you're just looking at your comprehensive plan, all of those numbers have now been updated to 2020, and that has been incorporated in the discussion as well. We didn't go to 2023 because there's just not good data for population estimates on that. To make it consistent, we went with the 2020 census numbers. Additionally, we do have the update. I have fixed the thoroughfare plan in your packet. And we have updated the map for the land use plan that includes the land use update for Mr. Wacker that was at the corner of Jeter and McMakin. That has been incorporated. So you have your new future land use map for July 2023 with all of those. Again, that one change, but it's reflective of where we are today. So I'll answer any questions you may have, but we've been over it so much. I'll go into as much or as little detail as you would like. On the comprehensive plan. Again, we started this process 8 months ago with the survey. Went through the survey results. Y'all have taken your charge from there, and we went through section by section and went over every detail, every word in the comprehensive plan to make sure it reflects y'all's experiences as planning and zoning commissioners, as well as that feedback that y'all received from the future land use or the comprehensive land use survey. And again, we had postcards mailed to every home to engage in the survey. We sent out Notify Me. It was in the mayor's articles. So we did a lot to make sure we received as much input as we could from the community. That's really the only way you can do something like this. If people don't engage until after the process, that becomes difficult for you to manage.
On the map, it shows a land use map. It shows rural services up where Tractor Supply is, and it's in green. And then under the uses, it lists all the various uses, RE5 and so forth. Oh, let's see here.
24.
See the map on 24, but you've got the uses.
Yeah, 24.
All right, I'm there. Now what's the question?
Oh, okay. It shows up there where Tractor Supply is. I believe it's shaded in green, and then the legend shows that to be rural services. Okay. And then under the uses here, as you scroll on down, then it starts to list, RE5 and RE2 and what all of these various uses are. But I don't think that rural services is a listed one here.
It is not, because that was a very specific zone category, basically for Tractor Supply.
Oh, okay.
We don't anticipate having that anywhere else. It's either rural business or something else. That one's very specific because they have the outside storage that they require. Again, I wasn't here, but I'm kind of caught up on those discussions. Doesn't mean we shouldn't necessarily have it though. So I would look to the commissioners. When we have a single zone like that, do we put it in there? We've done it for Brasher. And we've done it for some other areas where we aren't looking for new zoning categories that way, but it at least explains it.
I recall we had, in order to separate that from rural business, we created that. And I believe, we voted it in as a zoning district.
Yes.
I think it ought to be in there. I don't have the rest of you feel, even though it should be marked for this area only, or however it is we did, because we did it for light industrial. I believe that's not appropriate for other places in town. We did it for general, for this Lantana thing that was strategic, specifically for that. So to be consistent, I think it needs to be in there. Do you have comments on that, everybody?
Well, I think that's a good catch.
There
Yes.
you catch.
Yeah.
2 stars for you.
Well, it'll go down from here, I'm sure.
And again, from the ordinance, we'll put in there exactly what that is and it'll be in there. So if y'all don't want to hold up your recommendation to council, I'll make sure that edit is in there and I'll send it out. So you could make a recommendation based on,
And
Again.
whoever makes the
yes,
motion will include them.
yes, yes.
Would you go over for all of us, since we did not really talk about the thoroughfare plan because we were waiting on input to come back, and also from the planner, anything that, if the planner didn't do anything but update numbers, then we're done with that. If he did more, or she, would you please enlighten us on that, and also the thoroughfare plan?
Because the only other area that I had the planner go over was annexation, and because we're general law, that still applies. That section was not changed at all. The rest of it was just demographic. He didn't see anything of legal conflict, with his knowledge of planning. So he stuck straight to the demographic piece of the plan. Because again, y'all really driving this ship. Now on the thoroughfare plan, again, no recommended changes. He had a clarifying question where minor collector was at 22 feet because at one area it showed at 28 or something like that. And I said, no, this is correct. And so that was the only question he had. And then I added in to the table, the minor collector that we were missing.
Right. So
So
was that 28 removed out of here if it's in here incorrectly?
it was actually, if you pulled the pieces apart from that, someone had just drug over the 22. It's accurate. Again, that was specifically narrowed, that right of way, to, again, restrict. What's the word I'm really looking for, Ed? It's really to discourage speeding. You don't want large open right of way that is straight. That was done strategically before I got here, so it should stay. He just had a question because he had seen it somewhere else.
I just didn't want anything to happen.
No,
Question why, if it didn't get changed, because we did that in 2016, I think, or.
Yes, and again, it specifically has stayed at 22 feet because of that. Again, it was not a mistake. He just asked that. That was the only clarifying point he had. Everything else looked fine. We did reduce speed limits on the recommendation on that table. Since the town council has reduced McMakin, we reduced the rural collector. It's originally said 45 to 30 or as a speed range. and we just dropped it to 30. That is, I'm sorry, that is 45 in your packet, 39 in the plan. Is it consistent with the ordinances that the town council has passed regarding speeds on those thoroughfares?
So is that everything?
That is
Change
it.
in
Those,
the
I would, all I was looking for was a little input from them. We had done most of the work through the process. I just wanted clarification on those specific areas because they have a little more detailed knowledge than I do. And that's all that came back. I'm trying to look for that page. Hang on a second. I'll tell you exactly what that said before. Rural collector, it said 30 to 40 mile an hour was the speed limit recommendation. And again, we just dropped it to 30. On the minor collector, it said 30 to 35. We just dropped it to 30 because the town has adopted basically 30 miles an hour townwide, except for in some places where it's 25 in Saddlebrook and those areas. So we made that match. We just wanted to make sure all those pieces were working together from your plan and your ordinances so that they, again, people don't make assumptions and try and push it back the other direction against what has been stated as the desire of the town council.
Did we have any input via emails come in?
No responses, no emails for or against, no phone calls for or against on the comprehensive plan update.
Any more questions? And we went through all of the other changes line by line last month. So
I haven't had time to do it for y'all because basically just a time crunch. By the time this reaches council on the 25th, they will have the full red line to see all of those edits that y'all have made through this process, in addition to being able to see the final.
all right, we'll open the public hearing at 7:13. Do we have anyone wishing to speak for or against?
No, ma'am.
Close the hearing. 7:13. If there are more any discussions or anything you want to bring up, speak now.
That's the only thing I saw. Yeah.
And I told you two stars for that. In that case, do I have a motion to make a recommendation to council?
Yeah, I will make recommendation to council to approve the amend the code of ordinances to update the comprehensive land use plan. No, it's not correct. The Bartonville comprehensive plan with the change to include the rural services description.
Got it.
Did you get that second? Yeah. Okay, all in favor? Okay, public hearing number 2. We're moving to consider an ordinance amending the Town of Bartonville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Article 14.02, Exhibit A, Ordinance 361-05, zoning ordinance by amending Chapter 13, General Commercial District, GC, Article 13.2, uses permitted by granting a conditional use permit to authorize a drive-through use on an approximately 2-acre site and approving an accompanying site plan.
Madam Chair, I will be as detailed or as brief as you would like. Again, because it is a new conditional use permit, they've paid the application fee, they've gone through everything, and you see all of that information in your packet as far as those criteria. To put it in a nutshell, the only change that was made from the previously approved CUP, and this one is the site plan. They've reduced the square footage of the building from 3,751 down to 3,305. So about 450 square feet smaller. The original part count was 50 that they were providing when only 38 were required. They are now providing 42 spaces, so they've eliminated some of those, but because of the shrinking of the square footage, they're only required to have 33, so they still exceed the minimum required. The stacking is still the same. We require 5 stacking spaces. They show 22. Staff is recommending approval with those same conditions as were approved last time. If you'll go to, where is it? This is all right if I can get to it. I should use my Chromebook. There we go. One of the last CUP was the security provision. And if you see that in the staff recommendation, again, we're recommending those exact same provisions as in the previous, that number one is the security issue. It defines peace officer and defines those hours, as well as the basically the consequence if they do not have the personnel on site during those hours. The menu speakers at the drive-through location being 2 feet off. Number 3, the menu boards located, those have not moved. They're still facing away from Lantana. Trash receptacles placed at each drive-through exit and exit from the property. No outdoor music. The only speakers they will have are those on the menu boards. So again, there won't be any issue there. There is one add to the site plan that staff is recommending. All parking area lighting shall be installed and operated so as not to reflect or shine on adjacent properties in accordance with standards established in Bartonville zoning ordinance chapter 28. We did not have that one before, but we are recommending it just to keep the light off of those homes. No, ma'am. Technically, it's one of those things that it should be followed anyway, because it's in our zoning ordinance, but because that agreement long ago gave a lot of control to Lantana, that's just being recommended. It's likely to be that way already. We just want to make sure it's not something that slips through. I'll answer any questions you may have, but that's staff presentation.
I just want to kind of go back to the security part, number 1. Now, it's been a while since we looked at, is this exactly as we wrote it that night?
Exactly.
Yeah. I just read it. And I was kind of a little bit concerned about the pay that it says that the hourly rate is agreed upon between the chief of police and the owner operator. Is that a standard way of doing it, or is the owner operator like free to pay what they want to?
It's a standard for peace officers. It is standard. They always run it through the chief because that person will be interacting with our officers. We do it with Marty B's. Again, there's just a standard rate, and it can be any peace officer. We don't dictate the peace officer. We dictate what it is, but it's a standard going rate.
There was quite a bit of discussion about that.
There was.
And that was what was landed on as the most reasonable way to address both sides.
When you say there's quite a bit of discussion, you mean at our meeting or?
This meeting and
Oh, the council also?
Yes.
Yeah, it was just kind of, it just kind of stood out that I didn't know how things worked, but
We did not receive any comments for or against this CUP application via email or phone.
If I remember correctly, wasn't there the chief police set up, the original CUP that we posted that to be set up like that?
Yes, ma'am. It's the only way they can manage that is to have it set up that way.
So you want it to be only Bartonville police officers, I believe. I think that, I'm not sure.
No,
It's been so long, no, okay.
because
Yeah.
they have to be able to get people that are off duty.
Right, yeah.
To do it.
Now said, you know, we. Real difficult to dictate anything, particularly in the ordinance, because it becomes set in stone,
Yes,
and over time it becomes obsolete. And so this is the way that, this was, his suggestion is the best way to handle it, and it's how it's handled in situations.
that was exactly my thought whenever I read that. I had to remember that every time we write a CUP, it's forever. I mean, until, as long as Whataburger's here
Right.
50 years from now, no matter what the town looks like, you know, that they're still got to go by this, so.
Yes.
Any more you wanted to say, Thad?
That's all I had.
Okay, then I'm going to open the public hearing at 7:22. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Then I will close the hearing at 7:22. Okay. Discussion, comments? I think this item of adding the lighting code is a good one.
Mhm.
So with no more discussion, do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the new CPPS is.
This as is or with the addition?
Submitted.
As-
Whoa. With the addition of the lighting as recommended by.
All in favor?
Wait, you just a second.
Oh,
second.
sorry, Larry.
He was quiet, but he seconded it.
I was sure.
Now all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, public hearing number 3 coming up. Public hearing to receive public comment and consider an ordinance amending the town of Bartonville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Exhibit A, Article 14.02, Ordinance 361.05, zoning regulations for the town of Bartonville to change the zoning designation on 2 tracts of land totaling 1 acre, situated in the Keith Survey Abstract Number 1643A, Tract 4, and Newton Alsop Survey Abstract 0003A, Tract 7, in the town of Bartonville, Denton County, Texas, from agricultural, to residential estates, RE2. The tract of land is located on the south side of Frenchtown Road, approximately 330 feet east of its intersection with Dyer Road in Bartonville, Texas.
Madam Chair, this is what was basically, it's adjacent to what was the Fuller tract that y'all saw last year. This property, the current owner, Missy Growl, it was looking to replat into 2-acre lots as permitted per the zoning. During the review process, we discovered that this section was left out. Now, we don't know exactly how this piece got left out, but it was not noticed for a public hearing. And it was not included in the application. So you have this 1-acre parcel. That's why you're rezoning 1 acre into RE2. It would be consistent with everything adjacent to it so that that can be subdivided into those 2-acre lots as permitted. And it does match with your comprehensive land use plan. Missy's here if y'all have any questions for her, but really this one's fairly simple just because it was missed during that application process and we're just trying to pick it up now. But I'll answer any questions you may have. We received 2 phone calls for clarification on what it was. And when we described it, they're like, oh, okay. So again, nothing for really or against.
Thank you. We will open the public hearing at 7:25. Ms. Montgomery, are there any speakers?
I do have Missy signed up. Do you want to speak or are you just here for questions?
Just trying to get it to match.
Then we don't have any speakers.
Okay. Then I will close, well, while we have this open, do you have questions for Missy? Close the public hearing at 7:26. Okay, questions?
This looked like just a pretty simple administrative sort of thing. Is there anything more to it than that?
It's fairly simple. Again, it's simply to clean up
Yeah.
what is one ownership now. Again, there was split ownership at the time. This is all one ownership. It makes it consistent across, and it's hanging up a replat that you'll see next month if y'all approve this and if council approves this, your recommendation from there. But it's real simple. It's just matching it up with everything else that's right or that is around it.
And I have a question. This is the parcel of land where the realtor sign is?
I don't know if there's one on that end or not. Is there one?
Yes.
No,
The only thing that's there's a house.
yes, the zoning sign is on that. The realtor sign is actually right at the corner, basically of Frenchtown and Gibbons. That's the other end. So the 14 acres, basically, except for there's a small piece not included, goes from Gibbons all the way over to Dyer along Frenchtown.
That piece will make life a lot easier for you to deal with.
Yes, I don't know why I'm not listed.
Well, stuff happens.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to recommend to council?
I'm make a recommendation that on number 4 that we change the two pieces of property from ag to residential RE2.
Second,
That was Pat. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Future agenda items.
We have a submittal for Marty B's event venue that you will probably see next month. We also will have a replat for this property that you just did the rezone on next month as well. Those are 2 items I do know.
I just put something out here, kind of just to sort of, I've been thinking about is that there's been a concern, different towns around about Airbnb and trying to control it and such. And we have a description of bed and breakfast. We have one place in town that's a bed and breakfast. Do we need to look at that description of that and some way, I'm just asking us as a group here, do we need to look back at that and see if we could write that in some way to, I don't know, to keep it in mind what we really intended and which is maybe a difference from what an Airbnb is. And that's just, I'm asking, the commission here.
it's a good point. I think it's a good point because that has been a problem in areas even closer to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would even suggest to add rentals. I will say, answer that with a definite maybe, because the legislature didn't act on any of the bills that would have restricted municipalities in Texas from regulating short-term rentals. In response, a couple of cities have gone ahead with some regulations, which have been immediately taken to court. Fort Worth is now being sued by about, I think the number of plaintiffs in that case are around 75 or 80. Literally the petition takes, it's 38 or 39 pages long, and half of that is just listing who the plaintiffs are. Saying it's unconstitutional and alleging all sorts of problems with it, with the idea of taking away what has historically been a recognized leasing right with the arbitrary difference between 30 days versus however many long, months after that or a year. That's the allegations. Grapevine got hammered in their attempt to restrict short-term rentals and they lost the case. Arlington won theirs because they restricted it to allow short-term rentals near their entertainment district. So they created sort of a sub area where it would be allowed. Otherwise, it's not allowed in other residential areas. So Arlington is always as unique and odd, and no one else acts or looks, smells like Arlington. So, but Plano has enacted something. Dallas, I think, has enacted something. Fort Worth did, and Fort Worth is now in court over it. So, one of my partners and I were talking today about there may be another way to skin the cat, but we're looking into that as putting on a different hat. So that just kind of brings me back full circle to say, well, maybe. I know the town council kind of wants to talk about it with me. Just already as a thought. They actually asked me about it earlier this year. And that was when there were several bills percolating in Austin. And so I thought, well, we ought to wait and see what Austin does before we do anything. And we waited and saw that Austin ended up not doing anything. So, but there are some concerns there about regulating and then being dragged into court and having that cost the town a lot of money, just as a straight up matter. And so, I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be a good idea or not, just because the cities that have tried it are being sued over it. And we need to see, and there's one argument to be made to, see what flies and see what's approved.
Go ahead.
Is there, we're talking zoning issues here as opposed to definitions. Is there definition issues that we should be looking at and then wait on figuring out what's going to happen with the zoning issue itself?
Remember, is bed and breakfast defined in the zoning ordinance?
Yes,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Then it's a zoning issue.
That was a,
The definition is a
But-
zoning issue
Well,
because it's in the zoning ordinance.
I understand it's in the zoning ordinance, but changing a definition maybe to split between bed and breakfast and, is there a way to say bread and breakfast is not the same as Airbnb? And should it? Is that what you?
that's what I
asking?
was thinking, because
Yeah, I have that note.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to look at that.
because I was thinking I went back and looked at that definition. I'm thinking now, a bed and breakfast, what we had in mind was a real bed and breakfast. The people live there at that house, they serve breakfast and whatever, as opposed to, that's the way that we had in mind, but I'm not sure our definition is stringent enough to say this is what a bed and breakfast is, which is different from somebody
Short-term
renting out
rental.
their property. Yeah, that's what I had in mind.
I've
when I
got
looked
my
at it.
notes, so I'll look at
Yeah.
it.
And I was only half joking when I did that. The reason I did that is, again, it is on council's radar as well, and Ed's got it. So again, it is a hot topic. I just wanted him to be able to address that.
I'm off the hook. Yeah, it's above my pay
No,
grade.
but that's a different question. So
That's a good
I'll
one.
I'll look at that.
Under what Gloria said,
Yeah, I don't know.
could you just define rental property to be at least a month? Something like that, rather than
Well, that's
talk
what-
about short-term rentals, just define what a rental property is.
If it differs from the historical leasing efforts over time, which is what's being alleged against Fort Worth, I'm not sure that is a distinction with a difference. And that's the concern about regulating something that has been alleged to be unconstitutional. And so I think that's the concern, is doing something that'll get you dragged into court. And I'd rather get dragged in with something defensible and winnable As opposed to finding out after the fact that it's got holes.
What, do you know what they're alleging that it's unconstitutional, but on what grounds?
I only went through the petition that was filed on Monday. So I've only been through it once. And if I recall, there are 4 different constitutional provisions, I think, that they're alleging that it is an unlawful restriction of property rights. That historically, people have been able to not only own in fee simple, but one of the privileges of owning property in fee simple is to lease it. And I can
So
tell you,
the key is, what does a lease mean? An overnight deal?
well,
Or,
historically, it's always meant any kind of a lease. But carving out something short-term versus long-term is, I think, the allegation.
well, whoever's behind this, trying to get this changed, must be trying to just completely remove zoning from jurisdiction of cities.
Well, I'm not sure it goes that far because they're still saying it's all residential. So they're not saying it's a change in zoning, it's a change in, they're saying, when you either lease it short-term or long-term, you're still leasing it as a residence. That's the argument. With the other argument being, you're doing it to make money, therefore it's commercial. So there's the tug right there.
It'd be hard put not to say they're doing it for money when it's short-term rental like that too. Well, I guess we'll see where we go down this path. If there isn't anything else, I believe we have put everything on our agenda for the evening, so we'll close the meeting at 7:38. I thought we were gonna be here 2 hours.
Oh, I thought there'd be.
Oh, I know, I was
How
worried
far
there were
did-
gonna be a ton of cars.